Welcome to the Dup Dive, where we sift through stacks of sources and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're plunging into a true crime story that really shook a quiet suburban town. We're looking at excerpts from Buried Lies, The Secret That Ended in Blood. It's a narrative dissecting the shocking case of Katherine Miles.
Known widely as the PTA murder.
Exactly, the PTA murder. Our mission here for this deep dive is basically to peel back the layers, the secrets, the betrayal, the sheer desperation that can fester beneath, even the most perfect seeming surfaces. We'll trace the path that led this seemingly ideal suburban mom to become a convicted murderer. We'll look at the evidence that sealed her fate, and maybe even touch on some lingering questions that still kind of haunt the case.
And what's particularly striking, I think, is how this narrative draws you into that perceived reality, the public image, right?
Yeah.
And then it just meticulously reveals a vastly different, much darker truth underneath. This source material gives us a really good chronological look at how one simple lie just escalated.
Into total tragedy.
Exactly, a profound tragedy.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our journey starts in Chesterfield, Virginia. This is back in 2017. And the sources, they really paint this picture in an idyllic suburb, a place where, like, one part says, nothing ever really goes wrong.
The classic perfect town facade.
Right. And right at the heart of this picture was Katherine Miles. She was presented as, the ideal American woman, married to a local dentist, mother of two, organizing bake sales, fundraisers.
Even Bible study groups, the source mentions, every Thursday night.
Yeah. But our sources pretty quickly revealed that behind this cheery exterior, Katherine was under immense pressure.
Drowning is the word they use.
Yeah, truly drowning in debt, resentment, and just a growing pile of secrets.
And this makes you think, doesn't it? How often do we actually see beyond the surface of someone's life?
It's a good question.
This whole pattern of escalating debt, financial, emotional, but masked by this perfect facade, it's something you see again and again in these kinds of cases.
Well, absolutely.
The source highlights that by 2015, Katherine reconnected with an old flame, Daniel Rooks. Described as, well, charming, dangerous, and unlike her husband, exciting. Yeah. And that marked the beginning of a 2-year torrid affair. It's often at these kinds of breaking points, that people look for an escape, even a dangerous one.
And this is where Katherine's double life just, it took an even more dangerous turn. For 2 whole years, they kept up this really elaborate deception using fake business trips and burner phones, those disposable, untraceable phones.
Right, to cover their tracks.
Exactly, to keep their secret safe. But Daniel, well, according to the sources, eventually he wanted more.
He wanted her to leave her husband.
Explicitly. He wanted her to leave.
And that's such a critical moment, isn't it? If you look at the bigger picture, Katherine felt like she was facing this impossible choice. From her perspective, anyway.
Yeah.
The source explains she felt she just couldn't leave her husband because divorce meant losing her comfortable life, her kids, maybe even her community standing.
Everything she built.
Exactly. And then Daniel escalated things. He issued an ultimatum, threatening to expose the whole affair.
Wow.
The source even quotes this chilling voicemail he left. "If you won't do it, Katherine, I will. I'll tell your husband everything."
Jeez.
For people caught in a web like that, the perceived loss of social standing, that could be just as powerful, maybe more powerful, than financial ruin.
And it leads to desperate measures.
Absolutely.
Desperate measures.
But Katherine, well, according to the prosecutors anyway, she had another plan. On the night of August 12th, 2017, she invited Daniel to this remote cabin outside town.
Okay.
She told him she was finally ready to leave her husband. They drank wine, listened to music. Seemed almost normal, right?
Yep.
And then, the source says, Katherine went into the bathroom and came back out with a kitchen knife.
Oh, boy.
The brutality of it, as described in the source, it's just stark. She stabbed Daniel 5 times in the chest, once in the neck and once in the back.
It's hard to even imagine the state of mind required for that kind of violence.
Right. Unimaginable.
Indeed. And immediately after, Katherine claimed self-defense.
Of course.
However, this is where the forensic evidence, the police investigation, it really started to paint a very different picture.
How so?
Well, authorities reported inconsistencies in her timeline. They noted, for example, a lack of forced entry at the cabin.
Okay, that's significant.
Very. Also, no defensive wounds on Daniel, and crucially, no sign of Daniel attacking Katherine. You know, the evidence often tells its own story.
More reliably than a witness sometimes.
Often, yes.
So, what really clinched the case then? What was the most damning evidence?
It seems to have been Katherine's burner phone.
The phone again. Yes. Hundreds of texts were recovered, including messages like, "I don't know how long I can keep this hidden. He's threatening me, but I can't lose everything."
Ominous.
And then, really ominously, "It has to be done."
Wow. So the prosecution argued.
They argued she sent these messages to herself, trying to build some kind of self-defense narrative ahead of time.
But it backfired.
Completely. In court, they argued it ultimately just made her look more guilty.
That digital trail, just inescapable.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The trial started in late 2018, and it was quickly dubbed the PTA murder by the local media.
Highlighting that contrast, right? Her public image versus the crime.
Exactly, that shocking contrast. Katherine took the stand, crying, claiming she feared for her life.
But the jury,
presented with all that evidence we talked about, they were clearly not convinced.
and the verdict came quickly, didn't it?
Remarkably swift, they returned a guilty verdict for first-degree murder in, get this, less than 4 hours.
Less than 4 hours. That's incredibly fast for a murder trial.
It really is. The sentence: life in prison, no possibility of parole.
Wow. Case closed, you'd think.
You would think, yet. What's really intriguing here is that even with such a clear verdict, the source brings up what it calls the twist.
A twist? What kind of twist?
Well, there were these unconfirmed whispers, anonymous tips, suggesting Katherine might not have been alone that night.
Really?
Yeah, one tip claimed a second vehicle was parked near the cabin. Another suggested Daniel might have been blackmailing someone else too, not just Katherine.
Whoa. That's fascinating. So these leads, were they ever confirmed, followed up on?
No, never officially confirmed, but they certainly leave this chilling possibility just hanging in the air.
Is this just speculation, though, or do these unconfirmed bits genuinely complicate the official story even after the verdict?
That's a really crucial point, actually. And it speaks to the ambiguities that often linger in these complex cases, right? So while they are unconfirmed, the source brings them up because they highlight that even a clear verdict doesn't always, fully satisfy the public's desire for every single detail, every loose end tied up.
Right. People want the full story.
Exactly. And often, these lingering questions, these whispers, they can shape how people see the case long after the trial's over. Makes you wonder if every single secret really did come out.
In the end, Katherine Miles tried to bury the truth.
Yeah.
But as our sources show, like most secrets, it clawed its way to the surface.
Yeah.
Daniel Rooks died because he knew too much, apparently. And Katherine Miles is now living with her actions in a cold cell, alone with her guilt.
And this case really forces us to confront that stark contrast, doesn't it? Between the public perception and the hidden reality.
Definitely.
It raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener. Was this a calculated, cold-blooded murder? Or was Katherine truly just a desperate woman, cornered by her own bad choices and the overwhelming pressure of her hidden life?
This deep dive into the Katherine Miles case really underscores how incredibly complex human motivations can be. And how a web of deceit, once you start spinning it, it can lead to these irreversible, just devastating consequences. What does this story reveal to you about the true cost of secrets? And how appearances can be so deceiving, something to maybe mull over as you go about your day?